Hello friends, we welcome you to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Television. Chapters is the show that profiles authors, editors, and publishers in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. I'm Eliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. On our program today, we're talking about the latest anthology from Mountain State Press, Women's Journeys to Self-Empowerment, and the title of that anthology is Fearless. And we are joined by two people who produced and put the collection together, and one of the contributing authors, where we're joined by Kat Pleska and Kathy Manley today. Kat Pleska joins us as an author, editor, educator, publisher, and storyteller. She's an essayist for West Virginia Public Radio. Her first book, Writing on Comets, a memoir, was published by WVU Press in 2015 and was shortlisted for the 2015 Book of the Year in the memoir category by Forward Magazine. Kat's the 2016 recipient of the Governor Arts Award for Support of the Arts, and her cookbook, One Foot in the Gravy, Hooked on the Sauce, Recipes You'll Relish, was published by Mountain State Press in 2017. She holds an MFA from Goucher College in Baltimore. She teaches in the Graduate Humanities program at Marsh University and is also a full-time instructor for Arizona State University's Master of Liberal Studies program. And contributor Kathy Manley joins us today. We're going to talk to her about her contribution to the Fearless anthology, and she joins us as an English language arts educator from Logan County. She is also an active member of the West Virginia Writers Incorporated organization. So, Kat, welcome back to Chapters. Good to see you. Kathy, welcome to Chapters.
Thank you, Eliot.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to talk about this outstanding collection. So, Kat, I know you put this together, and I think some of this came from the Me2 movement that we've seen over the last year and a half or two, kind of sweeping across the country, where women are trying to kind of rededicate themselves not only to equality, but also having their voices heard. Can you tell us a little bit about how that was kind of the driving force for getting this collection put together?
Yes, well, as a woman, and as someone who came of age just after the civil rights and the wave of feminism, I kind of grew up on these ideas that everybody deserves a voice, everybody deserves equality, and it helped shape me and helped form me. So I've always been looking for ways that people, just regular folks, us out here in the hinterlands, can have a voice. Often, we have leaders and we have celebrities and we have all kinds of other peoples who do have that voice. But by the time that I came along and realized that I could produce a product that allowed for that voice, it was a number of years later. But when the Me Too movement started to rise, and I saw hundreds and thousands of women say Me Too, in which I was also one that said Me Too, it made me think about, here's yet another opportunity that we out here would like to have a voice, would like to be able to say how we were affected and what we did with that. But I didn't want just to talk about those incidents that happened to women. I wanted a conversation to begin. I wanted it to go just a little bit beyond that, and that women had the opportunity to talk about these and write about these incidences that profoundly affect their life, but also what they did after that. Women are strong, powerful entities on this planet, and I wanted the women to be able to tell us how they looked those incidents in the face and become fearless and say, no more. This is the way I'm going to deal with this. And so what happened in this anthology is 30 contributors wrote the stories about those pivotal moments when their lives were changed. They self-empowered. It wasn't an outside entity. It wasn't anybody else. It was when they realized within themselves, okay, this is enough. Enough. And then from that point, though a lot of the stories might come from dark places, they ultimately end up being uplifting because they overcame. They figured out in their lives how to do this. And I want to say that the courage it took a great many of these women to write this is astounding, because a lot of times this is the first time they ever wrote these stories, or even got it in print or put it down on paper. And then since we've been starting the reading tour, where a number of the women have the opportunity to read their stories, that's different yet again. That takes yet another layer of courage. It's one thing to see it in print and read it. It's quite another to stand up in front of everybody and say, and read your story. So it's been an amazing journey, and Fearless Women's Journeys to Self-Empowerment, I think, has given these women an opportunity to speak, and that's gratifying to me to be able to provide that platform.
And as you mentioned, 30 contributors, 30 regional writers contributing to this anthology. How did you go about soliciting those essays and those contributions that came into the anthology? Where did you find these women? How did you reach out to them?
I know them. I know them all. As a writer and being in all kinds of different situations, with my education, writing and teaching writing in the community, being connected with a number of universities, I just simply know a lot of women who are terrific writers. But having said that, I will also say that some of these women, this is the first time they've ever been published. Sometimes it's the first time they've even really written anything extensive. So I thought about that. I thought about all the accomplished women writers that I know with books and writing of all kinds of national attention. But I also thought about women I know who haven't had this opportunity, and I wanted to offer that. So I literally made a big old long list on a tablet, made pages of lists, and looked at all of the women that I thought, but I also thought about other types of demographics. Women of color, one of those involved. Kathy is a good example of someone who rose from extreme poverty to rise up and to become educated and to be a teacher. How many years?
About 37.
37 years in the public school system. Right there, she needs a medal.
Yes.
The medal honor, the Freedom Medal, because that's one of the hardest jobs in the world. And I get infuriated when politicians use that and make up things that aren't true about public education and our teachers. And speaking of that, one of the contributors in here is one of the 55 Strong, who led the strike last year and this year again, at the legislature to fight for their students and for their schools and for themselves. So I thought about, and a lot of these women, I knew their stories, some I didn't, and so I was surprised a number of times, but I thought about a number of demographics like that in order to select. And previous to this, 2 years earlier, I had done another anthology for Mountain State Press, Voices on Unity, Coming Together and Falling Apart, because we were just plunged into this world that became much more obviously divided. It became a lot of rhetoric, was angry on both sides, and I thought about unity and how we were losing it. But I also wanted the conversation, about coming together and falling apart, to talk about that whole thing and not to be divisive in what they were saying. And so I invited a lot of people to write for that, men and women. So this time I wanted some women have the opportunity that maybe had already spoken in unity but hadn't had a chance to speak in this. And some are repeats, but there's a lot of new voices in here, too.
And Kathy, you're one of those new voices who is in the anthology. And I loved your story because it was so personal. And I've known you a long time. We've been friends a long time. But I learned something about you that I didn't know after all these years of us being friends is about your background and about growing up. So tell us a little bit about your story and what the process was like having to put this, as Kat says, put it on paper and realize that this is going into an anthology that other people are going to read.
Okay. First of all, I'm happy to be here, Eliot. It's really good, a good opportunity. I'm so glad that Kat contacted me and asked me to contribute, and Poverty Brain actually came out of a course that I was taking in the late 90s. Dr. Fran Simone, she was teaching the West Virginia Writing Project in Logan County. And as I began to write pieces, she kept encouraging me, just keep writing these, and then one day you'll have a book. And I kept on. So when Kat asked me to consider doing something for Fearless, I thought I have something that I want to call Poverty Brain, because as an educator for all these years, there's a certain way that I think teachers can reach students, and it goes beyond being a significant other in their lives. And I tried to put that in the story, that if we don't do something right now to try to help the students growing up in poverty, they will never have an opportunity. And in the story, I also tried to bring across that it's our responsibility to try to teach them to dream. I think sometimes growing up poor and in poverty, you think dreams aren't for people like me. But sometimes as an older adult or a significant other, you can teach students how to dream and tell them what it's all about. So that's how it came about. When she asked me to do something, I thought, I'm not really sure this fits, but I did, send her a copy of it. She said, "This is what I'm looking for." So that's what I wanted to do with Poverty Brain. And actually, after I got finished, I thought, wow, I hope this will give someone hope and encouragement that we're needed. We're all needed in the lives of someone, and it goes beyond food and clothing and shelter. You have to really care, because as an educator in the classroom, those students that come from poverty, they are dealing on a daily basis just to survive. They come from homes that are just surviving. So as an educator, I try to do more than that to try to get to know them. So that's why that story's in there.
Yeah, and I've had the pleasure of hearing you read Poverty Brain, which is wonderful too. I've read it, and then having you read it, put the voice behind it, was wonderful.
Thank you.
As you read it in these venues, how does that, first of all, how does it make you feel, and then what kind of reactions are you getting from the audience as they're hearing your story, many of them for the first time if they haven't read the story yet in the collection?
Oh, goodness. Well, a wave of emotions is definitely there, because I revisit it. When I revisit my work, it's like I remember the emotions of what I was thinking as a child. No matter how many times I read that, when I was putting it together and putting my book together, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm excited, I'm thinking, oh, I made it out. I just keep thinking, I made it out. But the one line in there, it says, I think this is so important for all students. Sometimes everybody's asking you, what do you want to be? What do you want to be? Well, I think the question is, or we should be able to answer, what I don't want to be. So I think when you figure out what I don't want to be, then that will be the desire. You have to have a deep desire. That is what catapults you to success. So I'm overcome by emotions. And when I was writing this, as I remember certain parts and certain scenes, I did cry. And my husband come into the room like, what's going on? I remembering this part, I remember this part. So as of right now, it's still very emotional for me.
Very good, excellent. So, Kat, something that I really liked about this collection that you did, which was really unique, and I haven't seen this done a lot in anthologies, is that you invited more than 30 additional women, not just the contributors here, but 30 additional women to read one of the pieces in the anthology and then write a short commentary, almost like a mini review or a mini commentary on that. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to put that in your anthology and what that experience was like in terms of allowing those other women to read what different women had written about their self-empowerment experiences?
Well, once I got into it pretty well, and it even before they had a deadline and before the contributors started sending in the pieces, I was aware of how big the book could be. And I was thinking one day, I wish I could invite even more women. And it just occurred to me, I thought, well, why don't I just ask more women to just read one piece and comment on it? And then I'll include that comment at the end of the story or the essay or the poems. And so I asked a couple of people, and they were very enthusiastic about it. And they said, yes, I'd love to do that. And so that gave me the courage to ask for each piece in there to be commented on. And so one day I realized, well, shoot, I'm representing 60 women, not just 30. And it was just a way to get even more voices in there. And they loved doing it. Everybody loved doing it. And there were some wonderful comments. And I tried to reach out to women, some that I had asked before in the previous anthology, some that I'd never asked and hardly knew, and it just worked out really well, I think. I put my piece, I wrote the introduction, which is typical for an editor, but I thought this time, I'm not sure I'm going to do this anymore. This is a lot of hard work. It's hundreds and hundreds of hours of work, and somewhat like herding cats when you get all these people, submitting. So I thought, I'm not sure I'm ever going to do this again. I may do my own personal writing again. So I stepped out and put my own story in about a woman that I knew who self-empowered herself through all her life through great adversity, and I thought she deserves to have her story told. And I did that at the last minute, so my story doesn't have a comment, but that's okay.
Very good. And I understand that women's rights activist Gloria Steinem has a copy of this anthology.
She does. I haven't heard anything yet, but as it happens, one of my, I graduated from Goucher with an MFA, and one of my classmates was a niece, married to a nephew of Gloria's, and she's still within the family, even though they're not together anymore, but, you know, they have children, and she knows Gloria, and she was going to spend the weekend, going to New York to spend the weekend with Gloria, and I asked her, I said, would you, if I send you a book, would you kind of get it in Gloria's hands, you know? And she agreed to. And I sent a note to Gloria telling her that all of us out here, you know, appreciate, you know, her being the voice for women for all these decades. We deeply appreciated it, and I wanted her to have this collection of important, unknown, but important voices.
Absolutely.
You know, for women in 2019.
And I know I read this collection and have heard several of your writers and contributors read, and I was an emotional mess for 3 days in a good way after I read the collection. But then to hear them again and to hear them being read by the people who wrote them adds a special layer of power, I think, to the words that are there.
I think so.
And so I'm glad that is continuing, and that there's different opportunities throughout West Virginia and the region to hear these ladies. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. But I want to ask you all about kind of the resurgence of anthologies and short story collections. I know Kat as a publisher and Kathy as a writer, it seems like, you know, 5-10 years ago, everybody was writing novels and screenplays and chapbooks and those kinds of things, and you wouldn't almost rarely or very rarely see a short story collection or an anthology come out or get the kind of attention that certainly your outstanding anthology collection has, or we've seen short story collections come out. Well, why are the short stories, do you think, and the anthologies making a comeback? Why are people looking to books like these and the short story collections as preferred reading as opposed to, you know, novels and poetry chapbooks and those kinds of things? As writers and publishers, we're seeing a lot of that now, and we're seeing, you know, these anthologies and short story collections, you know, get on the New York Times bestseller list and become USA Today bestsellers. Where's that coming from? Why do you think that is? We're seeing kind of that shift away from what the traditional novel and those kinds of things into this. What's making them come back in such a strong way?
I think number one is time. It's easier to read a short story, and it's complete, nice and whole and everything, and put it down and come back and read that later. You could do the same thing with a novel, but sometimes you're into the narrative arc in a novel, and you know, you look at you're like, oh, I got to go to work, you know, or something like that. And so I think short stories lend themselves to that. I think anthologies are related to that, and I think another thing that's happened with anthologies in particular is they're a little more themed than they used to be. So this is about women's self-empowerment. So when you open it, you know, you're going to find similar story, different unique voices, but all focused on the same kind of sort of goal and message. And that makes a continuity, I would say. Just like you see short stories that also are connected or interconnected throughout too, and it's like reading a novel, but you can stop at one point and don't feel guilty about it. And I think that just national writing trends are going toward this. I think people have found that with an anthology particular, this is a vehicle for a lot of voices to speak in total to an important message or important issue that needs to be talked about and from different voices. So I think those are kind of the major things. There's the rise of short stories and anthologies, and I'm sure novels will always continue, and they still outsell short story collections and anthologies, but I think these are rising.
I agree. Also, I'd like to add, from an educator's point of view, a reluctant reader is more likely you can get them to read something out of a collection because they know it's just not that many pages, I can do it and get it over. That's one good thing. You can pull on board the reluctant reader. And also, going back to the time element, the novel studies will always be important in the classroom. I love teaching novels. But also, when you look, she mentioned the different voices, the different collections inside. You know, as an educator, I always try to find out what my students' reading preferences were, whether you liked adventure or fantasy. And when we do that and then we offer them choices, they say we should always offer our students reading choices. So when you offer them a book that's got several stories in it, you can just say, I want you to read one story today. They have choice. I think choices is very important in reading.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I've found as a reader too with short stories, even collections I love. I didn't love every story that was in
Right.
there, but if there's 10, I loved 7 or 8, or really loved 7 and liked 1 or 2, and didn't maybe like 1. But it is that thematic kind of continuity.
Success.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly right. And Kathy, I want to ask you too. I know that not really connected to this, but kind of an extension of the writing that you've been doing the last couple of years. You have a book coming out in the fall of 2019. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that and what it's about? And I think you have a tentative working title as well.
Yes, right now it's called Daddy's Leg. That's the first chapter, but I think we will find a better title. I think that suits it. But that is the book that came out from the West Virginia Writing Project course in the late 90s. And of course, I didn't get to write all the time, being a teacher September through June. Sometimes I'd write in the summer. But it is about our family struggle with poverty growing up in southern West Virginia. And it details a family that struggled working daily just to keep food on the table, and how I handled all of that. And you hopefully in the book you will see that I did make it out, and some of my dreams did come true. So that I wrote on it, and like I said, Dr. Fran Simone first discovered me as a writer in that class. She just kept saying, write another piece, can you write another piece? And I was thinking, okay. And she'd say, where do you have all of these stories? I'd say, well, they're there. But at one time she said, you have as many stories like, see, if we let water out of a dam, they could, you would have more than the water. But then I met Kat, thankfully, at West Virginia Writers Conference. You were the president there, I believe. And then she read some of my pieces, then further to encourage me. And sometimes we need, as a writer, we need all the encouragement we can get. And so then she became interested, and then I gave her, the first draft and then the second draft. So she really became interested. And so I'm really thankful to her, because it will become a book in my hands here in a few more months, I hope.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
I know, Kat, you're excited. Mountain State Press is excited
Yes.
to
Yes,
be publishing that as well.
absolutely.
Yes.
It is a wonderful story.
Yeah.
Although she talks about poverty in southern West Virginia, which we still have, it's still the way she renders the stories, the chapters, it's universal. Any family that struggles through this, and we have so much more now. Although she doesn't write about opioid crisis or anything like that, it's still the issue of not having money, not having enough food. I will add you one little tidbit. There was a baby in the family, and they didn't have anything to feed the baby. They had a little 2-room hut that they lived in, and her father sold that little 2-room hut for 30 cans of carnation milk to feed the baby. Now that's how desperate that it got. But you watch her from the time she was little just being so important to the function of her family and helping as small as she was. And she rises through all that, faces all kinds of adversity, and makes the determination, particularly in the chapter Poverty Brain, that this isn't going to continue. That's when she faced her fears, became fearless, and then from that moment on, everything changed.
Yeah.
Everything. So it's a very uplifting story.
Fantastic. Well, looking forward
you.
to it coming out.
It's exciting.
I'm looking forward to having you on Chapters to talk about it when it comes
Yes,
out
that's
too.
right.
Looking forward to that. So, Kat, tell us a little bit in our final moments here. I know you've done a lot of speaking engagements already with this, but kind of big picture over the next several months.
Okay.
3, 4, 6 months out. We're taping this in June of 2019, so several months out. Where can folks plan to see you guys and to hear this being read, but also where can they get copies of Fearless too?
Okay. Well, they have copies here at the Inner Geek here in Pullman Square in Huntington. Taylor Books in Charleston has them. There'll soon be other bookstores throughout the state, independent bookstores that will have them. I'm working on getting them into the Barnes & Noble and Books A Million system. my distributor, in Tamarack and that sort of thing. So it'll be available throughout the region, hopefully nationally. I'm working on that. I'm going to be speaking all around the state with my various and sundry readers who, another demographic I did was to look at the different parts of the state and say, can I find a couple of women in Parkersburg, Lewisburg, the southern part of the state. I have 4 women, Morgantown, and because I knew I would have readings in all these areas, so all of these women get a chance to read and be exposed. So from venue to venue to venue, the readers will change as they read different, their pieces in there. One of the authors in here is Grace Cavalieri, who's well known from our state and is a well-known poet, and she's the poet laureate of Maryland. I expect that along with her and a couple other 3 other writers that I have, contributors in Maryland, I'll read over there, possibly in DC in the future. I have 3, they're in Boston. So I'll probably be flying up there to Boston and doing a reading up there this fall. So, and anybody, anywhere else that would like to have us read, all they need to do is contact me, and I will help make the arrangements and get readers there, and it's a wonderful experience.
And how can folks get in contact with you to set that up?
Well, they can email me at catpleska53 @gmail.com, or at the press's email address, msp1 @mountainstatepress.org. Either one of those, they can reach me pretty easily.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Cat Pleska has been our guest here today. She's an author, editor, educator, publisher, and president of Mountain State Press. She's been talking about the latest collection that she collected and edited, which is Fearless: Women's Journeys to Self-Empowerment. We've also been pleased to be joined by one of those contributors to the anthology, also an educator as well, Kathy Manley. So ladies, congratulations on this outstanding collection. A lot to be proud of here.
Thank you.
Excellent
Thank you,
work,
Ellen.
and I certainly hope that if folks have an opportunity to hear you come and read from this book, they will take that opportunity and certainly get in contact with you to schedule a reading if they're looking for that opportunity, because it's a wonderful collection. I hope everyone will get a copy. So congratulations, and thanks for coming on Chapters to talk
Thanks,
about it.
Eliot.
Enjoyed
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We also want to take a moment to say thanks to the staff and management of the Inner Geek in Huntington for providing our on-site support and assistance today. Please come down to the Inner Geek and get a copy of Fearless. We also remind you that many of the other interviews we've conducted here on Chapters, those interviewers have their works for sale right here at the Inner Geek. So come on down to Pullman Square and get whatever reading taste you have satisfied right here at the Inner Geek, and we appreciate their support each and every episode on Chapters. If you'd like to stay in contact and up to date with what's going on here on the program, we've made a variety of ways for you to do that. The first is through our email address, which is right here at the bottom of the screen. We do ask that you please include the name and town in which you're writing from so that we can keep track of that correspondence if you do send us an email. We are also on YouTube and Facebook. We have a Chapters page through the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube, and that address is also right here at the bottom of the screen. Just look for the Chapters tab and click on that, and we have all of our interviews archived for you there as well, so you can watch them, comment on them, and share them and post them to whatever social media platform you like to use. And if you're a Facebook user, we also have a Chapters page on Facebook, and that address is here at the bottom of the screen. What you'll find on the Facebook page is our more recent interviews. They are categorized and archived there. You can like them, you can share them, comment on them, and share them to any social media Facebook page that you have embedded with your own Facebook page. So if you like Facebook, YouTube, or email, we've made it possible for you to stay in contact with the program. And we know many of you have done that, and we appreciate all the social media responses, comments, emails, repostings, and everything that you do to help spread the word about what's going on here on Chapters. We appreciate it very much. And that's going to do it for us this time on Chapters, but please come again next time. And in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.